Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and today I'm going to make a video and talk to you about perfecting your Fakener character. Now by this point my character is level 92 and he has done quite a few Deathless Uber Zeri runs, taken on most tier 15 bosses. In this map I end up attempting double core and it's just a little bit too insane for me, but regular core isn't too much of a problem anymore. And even double core is doable, I just needed to play it a bit better. That said, the character does not have a Vol's Devotion, and it's pretty much at its final conclusion without the Vol's Devotion. The only thing left I can upgrade is essentially the neck to use endurance charges as well as power charges, but I don't feel like it's necessary, and I'm rather happy with my Call of the Brotherhood setup, which helps freeze lots of monsters. So besides the Vol's Devotion, the only real thing I could upgrade is a shield, and we're talking like a 10 to 15 Exalt shield for some more spell power. But with what I currently have, I have reached a 50,000 average damage discharge. Now when we're talking about that, that is 7 power charges up, and that is the max amount that I can get, and that is the average damage discharged. We go up to 50,000 with all of that up, without any flasks or anything, and that is substantially more than any of my previous Fakeners I have ever made before, even with the Vol's Devotions. So we've managed to unlock pretty much the best DPS Fakener could ever get, and that is obvious with Ascendancy classes and all that, but it's also probably one of the most comfortable that Fakener has ever been, as far as the build goes, playability, defense, and movement and all of that. So throughout this I show you I've taken on pretty much every tier 15 boss. These are all first runs and they all went rather well. I could keep mapping rather safely, rather reliably. But the point of the video is to show you how to perfect your Fakener, because I often get asked, Mathel, how is your DPS so strong and girthy, and are we even still talking about DPS? I digress. People often ask, how do I get such DPS numbers, and why don't they have the same DPS numbers? Even though they're just missing a jewel or a few levels, or maybe their dagger isn't as good. Well, long story short, it all adds up. You need just about everything to come to the right conclusions. So as I said, here we are on level 92 Trickster, some can't spell my name, Shadow. I have pretty much everything I wanted to fill out, and I filled that out by level 91. By 91 I had just about everything I wanted as far as notable passives and good DPS or good efficient nodes go. Beyond this level, all I could really think about getting is like Energy Shield, maybe Flask Effect. There's not too many strong nodes left to get, so level 91 is when I personally capped out and was happy to more or less call the character complete. So when we're talking about our maximum DPS, our average DPS, what we're talking about is with increased area, so basically the 5-link setup for damage, and max amount of charges. So no flasks, nothing like that, and I've currently got 48.7k average discharge with 7 power charges. It's not quite 50k because my shield did change and I lost some spell power. Now to give you an example of what exactly that looks like, or what makes that, let's just say my shield currently has 15 spell power, right? Which isn't much, but if you upgrade to a big 73 spell power shield, so if you get a really nice shield like this one, replace that that mana with spell power, you might think, yeah, that's going to be a decent upgrade, but it's actually quite huge. So where are we? 48.8 right now. Put that on, 55k. Shield alone just took us 7,000 DPS higher. Now once you get to the higher levels, as perfected as you possibly can, the little things and the smaller numbers and perfections really start to add up quite substantially. So the extra mod on your jewel, the extra few spell power on your dagger, all of that sort of stuff. But that's just an example of how a really big shield could up your DPS numbers a lot more than you might think. But beyond that, it all adds up, like I said. Up until level 91, I was leveling 6 discharges. I started right from the get-go with this character, and including the one that I started leveling with. So I had 7 discharges to Vol. I went from a level 19, they turned into 20, and then I managed to Vol one of them into a 21. So I went from level 19 at 38,000 DPS into a 20, into a 21. All of a sudden, I'm at 48,000. So I gained 10,000 just off of a couple of gem levels, and because I had the presence of mind to go for 6 at the same time, including the 7th, to have a good chance of getting a level 21. So for starters, discharge level, pretty important. If you can get a 21, that's great. If you can't, 20 will take you all the way through the game. I did my first Uber run with a 19. It's just extra buffer for playing worse, really. More damage. So then you need basically quality on your gems. So 20 quality crit strikes is going to help. A quality cast on crit is going to help. A quality increased area is also going to help. I don't currently have one, but that's not what we're talking about for the DPS. Beyond that, a diamond ring, that's extra crit. On your citrine amulet, or whatever amulet, crit multi is a pretty big deal. Spell damage is a pretty big deal. Getting more crit, another big deal. The more crit you get, the higher your discharge crit is going to be to cap. With 7 charges, this is pretty much going to be at cap, which means crit multi is going to be all the more important. So these little bits of crit multi start adding up to something huge. Likewise with the face breakers. Now I can give you another example, because a lot of people don't use face breakers, they use, let's say, void bringers. Void bringers are pretty much a defensive glove as far as I'm concerned. They give you spell crit, which is something your discharge doesn't need. It needs crit multi. So if you're using void bringers, you're using them for the ES, because face breakers give such a substantial amount of DPS. So here's 48k. Take off our face breakers, 39. 20% of my DPS, 10,000, all comes from face breakers. Because that crit multi is so substantial when you're nearing your crit cap, and because you don't get that much crit multi from other sources. So that's another big reason I have good DPS. The spell power on your dagger is going to help a lot. Well, Brotherhood has 25% lightning damage, that helps. Beyond that, that's the rest of the gear. But what's actually really important now is jewels. Jewels, you try and fill out things that you can't really get and things that are supposed to be worth a lot to you. Because on the tree here, we don't have much crit multi, do we? As far as I'm concerned so far, I have picked up this and this for crit multi. And then because you're so spread out trying to get crit chance and ES, you really don't get that much spell power or scaling either. You get this elemental damage, a little bit here, a little bit of spell power there, a little bit of spell power here, and a little bit of spell power here, as well as the area damage. So in total we got something like 150% damage, which isn't much for the grand scale of things. Which is why you want on your jewels the things you can't get. Crit multi, spell damage. So for jewels I've been going for spell damage, which comes in the form of spell damage to shields, while using shields I mean. Area damage, it's going to be the same thing. And crit multi. Now, crit multi is really easy to get because it can come from crit multi to lightning skills, fire skills, cold skills, elemental skills, spells, all kinds of shit, because discharge is tagged as everything. Spell, AoE, fire, cold, lightning. So I tried to buy jewels that had 3 props at the very least towards damage. Every single one of my jewels has 3 damage props. Area damage, crit multi, and spell damage. And in what I found was area damage and spell damage were roughly equal to 1 point of crit multi. So count them as the same thing. Whenever I'd shop for jewels, I'd just add them up. So 17 and 12 is 29 and 10, that's 39. So we got 39 points of damage on this jewel. This jewel over here, we got 46 points of damage. This jewel over here, 42 points of damage. So I was going for somewhere around 40 plus points of damage per jewel at the very least. You can get higher. It ranges from about 35 to 45, the numbers that you can roll on these jewels. And to give you an example, I'll show you what kind of DPS just one of these jewels would give me. And bear in mind I have, I don't know, like 5 of them. So when you think a jewel is that important, or, you know, do I really need such good jewels, you'll see that they're actually pretty substantial. So here we are again, 47.6, don't have my golem up, whatever. Take out, let's take out this one jewel here. Is that 43, I think? 48.8. Damn. Lost 4,000 DPS from one jewel slot. I got 5 of them. Let's just say I'm going to be losing something like 15 to 20,000 DPS. And that's essentially all there is to it. You got to min-max everything. You got to look for the right things on jewels. Things usually that you can't get. So that's the answer to every single character's jewels. What jewels do I get for this character? You look for things that are hard to get and things that have high value to you on jewels. Beyond that, like I said, make sure you level up your gems. Just min-max. That's why I always go for high spell damage shields, because they're worth so goddamn much. You can go for a nice high ES shield like this, or even higher. Spell crit, not going to be worth much to you here. But that's why I'm always going for the high spell damage on the shield, because it's worth a lot of DPS, and it's worth... it's an extremely important slot for your DPS, because it's very achievable to get 40, 50, 60 spell power on your shield, while sacrificing maybe some ES on it. That's all I got though, guys. I hope that gave you some insight onto how to perfect your Fakener. If you want to go to the next level, by all means get a Vols of Devotion. That will take your DPS up probably another 20, 30, 40%, something like that. You of course won't be able to use a Call of the Brotherhood, because then you'll be using all 3 elements, and you can't trigger Elemental Equilibrium that way, unless you started off as a Templar Inquisitor, which causes a whole different bunch of problems because you're not Trickster. So if you want a Vols Devotion, get one. I find that it's not terribly necessary for the build when you can fill out your DPS in such amazing ways in the current stage, and especially having a Call of the Brotherhood makes life pretty safe thanks to freezing just about everything, except for the big bosses. So once again, I am Mathel. This was my level 92 Fakener update on the Prandus Softcore League. Thank you very much for watching, and see you guys next time.